I stood in the hallway outside room 312 of the Pleasant Hills Senior Care Center, gripping a bag of groceries I knew my father wouldn't touch. He never ate the apples I brought, or the rye crackers, or the sugar-free gum. But I brought them anyway. Every visit, out of habit, or guilt, probably both. It smelled like lemon disinfectant and plastic flowers in there. I paused before knocking, took a breath, then walked in. "Hey Dad." No response. He was sitting in his chair near the window, staring past the parking lot, as if the view had more to offer than the sun standing 5 feet away. He didn't turn, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge me, but I wasn't surprised. That's how it had always been. I set the bag on the counter next to the small TV. He used to watch the news religiously. Now it just played at low volume. Anchors mouthing headlines he couldn't hear, and wouldn't care about if he could. "How was physical therapy today?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Still nothing. His fingers twitched a little on the armrest. Parkinson's did that. It also gave him an excuse to ignore me more thoroughly than ever before. I envied the disease, sometimes. At least it had a clear diagnosis. I sat across from him, leaned forward, and said what I always said. "I'll stay for a while." This was our pattern. I came every Wednesday, sat for 45 minutes, spoke into the silence, pretended it mattered, then left. But today was different, because last night, I opened an envelope from the county clerk's office. Inside were 2 sheets of paper, black and white, low resolution, but the image was clear. My father's signature, next to my brother's, dated 7 months ago. A property deed transfer. The family house on Bismarck Avenue, the one my father promised would be split between us after his death, had already been sold for $1.2 million, sold behind my back, signed away while I was away at a conference in Vancouver, pitching my startup's second round of funding. While I was juggling investors and development teams, my brother and father were juggling bank accounts and lawyers. I stared at the signature. His hand was already shaky by then. I doubted he even read the papers, but he signed it, which meant he was complicit, or worse, he was still in control enough to betray me deliberately. I looked at him now, frail, sunken, eyes glassy, the same man who once built a regional construction empire with nothing but grit and a Rolodex full of shady favors. My whole life I'd watched him trade loyalty like currency, gamble ethics for access, and dress it all up in words like strategy and legacy. And I, his youngest son, was the good one, the clean one, the outsider in his own family for refusing to cut corners or take shortcuts. They called me Idealist Isaac at family barbecues, said it like it was a flaw. Now my reward was a courtesy email from a clerk alerting me that the property no longer existed in my father's name. They didn't even tell me, just erased me. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the lot. Same gray sedans and weathered pickup trucks, same sad geraniums by the fence. I turned back to him. "You signed it," I said quietly. "You let him have it all." His right eye twitched. That was new. A flicker of something. Anger. Recognition. I leaned closer. "You always said you'd leave things equal. That was your word, remember? Split everything down the middle. No fights. That's what you told me when Mom died." He blinked. "Once. Lyle sold the house 2 weeks ago. Bought himself a lake property, sent me a photo from his new boat with the caption, 'Earned not given.'" My fists clenched at the memory. "You want to know the real reason I came today?" I said, my voice colder now. "Not out of habit, not out of love." I leaned in. "I came to tell you what happens now." His eyes focused slightly. No twitch now, just stillness. "Lyle made one mistake. He kept one of the old company credit cards active. The one linked to our shared trust account for maintenance expenses on the Bismarck property. The one he was supposed to close when Mom passed, but he did, and he used it, twice." I pulled out my phone, showed him the screen. "2 charges," I said. "One for a property management consultant, one for a stager." I scrolled further. "Both filed under the business trust, which makes them traceable, which means I have proof he accessed joint assets after initiating a private sale." I leaned back. "It also means I have legal grounds to open a claim of trust fraud." I already spoke to Marla, Mom's old probate attorney. She was furious. My father looked away, out the window again, but he was listening now. I could feel it. "I'm not stopping there," I continued. "The taxes on the sale haven't been paid yet. Lyle was waiting until the next quarter, probably to delay fees. That delay is going to cost him. I tapped my screen again. I filed a motion this morning to freeze the trust and trigger a forensic audit, which means every transaction for the past 3 years will be reviewed. His fingers curled slightly against the armrest, like he wanted to stop me, like he wanted to speak. I didn't let him. You protected him your whole life, every lie, every failure, every mess he made. You cleaned it up or blamed someone else. He finally turned his head toward me, slow, heavy. He never earned your loyalty, I said, and I'm done pretending I did. I walked to the door, stopped, and turned. One last thing, I said. You'll be getting a letter in 2 days, from my attorney. It'll explain everything in detail. You won't like it, but you'll understand. He didn't blink. I opened the door. I'll still be back next Wednesday, same time, and I left. Back in my car I sat in silence. Rain tapped against the windshield. The sky looked tired. So did I. My phone buzzed. Message from Marla. Filed and confirmed. Audit. Scheduled. They'll be notified by Friday. I replied with a thumbs up. Simple, quiet, effective. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just paperwork. Sometimes it's just being the one who finally says, no more. Friday morning came with the kind of quiet I've learned to respect. No phone calls, no angry emails, just a silence thick with waiting. Lyle hadn't responded yet. Not to the audit notice, not to the certified letter from Marla's office, not even to the formal freeze on the trust. I knew him well enough to guess why. He was scrambling, calling his contacts, maybe the same real estate lawyer who pushed the sale through, maybe Dad's old accountant, trying to make numbers look cleaner than they were, maybe just staring at his phone, hoping silence would make it go away. It wouldn't. At 11:07 a.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. This Isaac. Male voice. Tight. Rushed. Yes, this is Dennis Rowe. I handled the title and escrow for the Bismarck sale. Lyle gave me your number. I didn't respond. He said there's some kind of issue with the trust, that there's been a misunderstanding. Still I said nothing. He asked me to call you, see if we could sort this out before lawyers get too involved. I finally spoke. Lawyers are already involved. Right. Well, still maybe there's a way to resolve things quiet. Lyle mentioned some paperwork errors. Said your father signed everything voluntarily. He did. So then, but Lyle never disclosed the active trust connected to the property, nor did he notify the other beneficiary of the trust before proceeding with the sale. A pause. You mean yourself? Yes. Another pause, longer this time. That's a serious claim. It's already been filed. Well, he cleared his throat. I'm going to need to make some calls. Do that. I hung up. At 2:12 p.m. Marla forwarded me a reply from the county auditor's office. Lyle had requested a delay in responding to the audit, claimed he was out of the country. Standard deflection, but the email was time-stamped from Fort Lauderdale. At 4:35 p.m. I received a text. Lyle, can we talk? I stared at it for a while, then typed, next Wednesday, room 312, 10 a.m. He didn't reply. The weekend passed like a fuse, quiet, steady, inevitable. I spent most of it in my apartment, overlooking the west side of the city. Not luxurious but clean, sparse. I liked it that way. Every object had a purpose, every shelf, a reason. Unlike the house on Bismarck with its useless chandelier over a table no one ever ate at, and rooms that had become mausoleums of memory. My mother's sewing chair still sat by the guest window when the house was sold. I wonder if Lyle even noticed. Sunday night, I made a copy of the evidence file, printed, labeled, annotated, not for court, just for me. Something about putting ink on paper made it feel final. Monday morning, a message from Marla. Auditor has accepted documentation. They're expanding the review. That meant deeper access. That meant account logs, transaction dates. Every dollar Lyle moved would be dissected, and if he touched anything that wasn't his to touch, it would show. Wednesday, 10:03 a.m. Lyle was late. I sat in the hallway outside Dad's room. The nurse, a short woman named Carmen, walked by and gave me a nod. She knew the routine. I brought donuts sometimes. Today, I didn't. At 10:11 he arrived. Tan, sunglasses on his head, wrinkled blazer over a polo, like he thought appearances still worked. Hey, he said, like it was any other day. I stood up, didn't shake his hand, just opened the door and motioned him in. Dad was awake, barely. Lyle walked to the chair by the window and sat, didn't say a word to, just leaned back and looked at me. You made this a whole thing, he said. I didn't answer. You could have just called, asked what happened. You didn't tell me what happened. He smiled, fake and smooth. It wasn't personal. It never is until it is. He rubbed his jaw. I made a judgment call. You were always busy. Dad and I handled it. He agreed.
He agreed because you gave him one version of the truth, and you're giving him another now. He tilted his head. Come on, man. You don't need the money. Your startup's doing well, right? I stared at him, long enough to make him uncomfortable. This isn't about money, I said. Then what? Respect. Lyle scoffed. You think this family ever ran on respect? Dad respected results. That's it. I turned to Dad. He hadn't moved, but his breathing had changed. Slower, deeper. You think I didn't earn this? Lyle asked, voice rising. I managed the house for 10 years, fixed the roof, paid the property taxes when Dad forgot. You were in Seattle, chasing software dreams. I was here. You were cashing rent checks from tenants who didn't exist. He blinked. What? I pulled the property tax records. You listed it as a rental property for 5 years, claimed depreciation, but no one lived there. It sat empty. His face changed, just slightly. Enough. Tax fraud, I said. On a trust asset. That's serious. You wouldn't. I already did. Silence. Then his mouth twisted into a half smile. You think this gets you anything? No, but it gets you less. I handed him the envelope. He opened, saw the audit confirmation, the motion for an injunction, the statement from the escrow officer noting the non-disclosure of co-beneficiaries. This goes away, I said. If you sign a settlement, you repay half the proceeds from the sale, sign a full waiver of any further trust claims, and agree to a closed mediation for any other disputes. He folded the papers slowly. And if I don't, then it doesn't go away. His eyes flicked to Dad. This will destroy him. No, I said. You already did. Lyle signed the settlement 2 days later, not because he wanted to, because he had no choice. The forensic review showed another account, hidden in Nevada, proceeds funneled there, untaxed, unreported. The IRS got a redacted copy. He paid me what he owed, more actually, to keep it quiet. We split what was left of the trust. Dad never said a word about any of it, just stared at the window like always. But I came every Wednesday, still do, not for him, for me, to remember that even in silence justice speaks. 2 months later, I got a call from a woman named Dana. She was executor of an estate I'd never heard of. Apparently my mother had set aside a separate fund, one none of us knew about, meant to be dispersed after both parents passed. A quiet savings account, tucked away in a credit union in Oregon. She left it to me, only me, with a handwritten note, for the son who never asked for anything. I read that line again and again, then I closed the letter, and finally allowed myself to cry.
I didn't expect a message from Dana again. 3 weeks after the Oregon account was confirmed, and the transfer completed, she called a second time, said there was a lockbox with my name on it, stored in a branch vault, left under instructions from my mother, 21 years ago. The only condition, it could only be opened by me, alone, after both parents had passed. Your father's not deceased, I said. No, Dana replied, but your mother refiled the directive 2 years before her death. She removed that condition. Why? She didn't say, but she had. In her way, my mother was soft-spoken but rarely uncertain. She saw things my father missed, or ignored, and she had seen something in me she wanted to preserve, maybe even protect. I flew to Portland the next Friday, took a cab straight to the branch. It was a small building, tucked between a deli and a consignment shop, the kind of place that still used paper sign-in sheets and counted cash manually. Dana met me at the door, a compact woman with silver hair and direct eyes. Follow me, she said simply. The vault wasn't dramatic, no clicking locks or rolling metal doors, just a discreet key, a sealed box and a private room. I sat. She left me alone. The lockbox wasn't large, black metal, standard issue. Inside, one Polaroid photo, my mother, holding a baby version of me, her handwriting on the back, the beginning of everything, one worn leather bracelet I hadn't seen since childhood. She used to wear it on gardening days, a sealed letter, and a USB drive. I opened the letter first. Isaac, if you're reading this, your father is likely still alive, but I'm not. I debated waiting until we were both gone to share this with you, but in the end I decided not to give him that kind of control. There are things I wanted you to know, things I couldn't say while I was alive, not because I was afraid, but because I knew how much pain it would bring you if it came from me directly. You always knew Lyle was his favorite, but what you didn't know is that it wasn't because of love, it was because of convenience. Lyle became the son your father needed for appearances. Flexible, loyal to fault, easy to manipulate. You were the one who reminded him of his failures. Your honesty made him uncomfortable. Your integrity made him defensive. But to me those were the things I was most proud of. I kept this letter, and the drive, because I suspected, one day you'd need proof of more than just betrayal. You'd need proof of your own clarity. The USB holds scans of property documents, bank transfers and a log I kept of the changes to your father's estate, most made without proper consultation. I didn't know what you'd want to do with them. I just wanted you to have the option, because for once, I wanted someone in this family to have a real choice. And that someone was always going to be you. Love. Mom. I sat in that small room for nearly an hour, holding the bracelet, staring at the photo. My hands didn't shake, my throat didn't tighten, but something inside me shifted. I'd come here thinking everything was finished, but my mother had left me one last thread, one last truth. Back home, I plugged in the USB. She wasn't exaggerating. The folders were meticulous. Trust documents dating back 15 years, bank statements showing early withdrawals, draft wills, some never signed, showing Lyle as sole heir, others listing offshore assets I never knew about, audio files quietly recorded conversations between my mother and dad, his voice denying, avoiding, redirecting. She had built a record, a quiet rebellion in files and facts, not to weaponize, but to protect, and now they were mine. That night, I made one more decision. I called Marla. There's one more thing, I said. By Monday we'd filed a motion to reassess the estate, and open a quiet inquiry into the discrepancies in asset reporting, not to reopen the fight, not to gain more, but to set the record straight. My father didn't respond. He didn't even try. It was Lyle who showed up at my office unannounced. He looked smaller, not physically, just less inflated. You win, he said. This isn't about winning. Then what the hell is it? I paused. Legacy. He scoffed. No one cares, Isaac. In the end, no one remembers the truth. They will when it's written down. 6 weeks later, the inquiry closed. The estate was restructured. My mother's documentation accepted as formal record. Her share of assets were moved into a new memorial fund, not connected to either Lyle or me. It would serve as a grant for young women pursuing architecture and urban development. Her passions, her legacy. Lyle said nothing. I doubt he ever will again. And my father, he died 4 months later, alone in room 312. No final words, no confession, just a file closed quietly in the middle of the night. I didn't cry at the funeral, but I wore my mother's bracelet beneath my cuff. It left an imprint on my skin, a small mark, something lasting, something earned. I kept the bracelet on for a week, then eventually I stopped noticing it was there until someone else did. It was during a panel I spoke on, a university event about ethical startups. One of the students raised their hand during the break and said, "I like your bracelet. It looks old." "It is," I replied. My mother. They nodded like they understood, but they didn't. Not really, not yet. 3 months passed. The memorial grant launched in late spring, timed with what would have been my mother's 71st birthday. We awarded the first recipient a month later, a quiet, determined student named Lillian, whose project proposal focused on repurposing abandoned lots into youth gardens. "She reminds me of your mother," Marla said after the committee vote. Straightforward and stubborn. I smiled. Perfect. One evening, after a long day of onboarding new hires at the firm, I walked past the old Bismarck house. It had been gutted, new siding, new windows, even the porch was replaced, but the shape of it, the bones were still there. A young couple stood on the lawn holding hands, talking to their contractor. Their child, maybe 6, was tossing pebbles down the driveway. They saw me watching, and waved. I waved back, and kept walking. I didn't need to reclaim that house. I'd already taken back everything that mattered. I still go to room 312. It's empty now, of course. Carmen lets me in sometimes when the room isn't occupied. I don't stay long, just sit for a minute, long enough to let the silence settle. There's no plaque, no photo. That's how it should be. His story ended quiet, and mine didn't end at all. A year after the settlement, Lyle sent me a letter, typed, 2 paragraphs, no apology, just a brief explanation. Said he was living in Mexico now, said he'd found some peace, asked if I ever thought about how different things would have been if we'd just talked. I didn't respond, because we had talked, he just hadn't listened. The foundation grew, 2 grants turned into 5, then 12. We started offering mentorships,
internship. A few alumni were hired into my company. One of them, a wiry kid named Marcus, became my lead UI designer within 8 months. He reminded me of me if I'd had someone like me guiding me. "Why do you fund this?" he asked one night after hours when we were finishing a late client demo. "It's complicated," I said. "Was it family money?" "Yes." "Do they support it?" I paused. "They're not around anymore." He nodded slowly, not pushing, just absorbing. Then he said something I hadn't expected. "You're not like most founders." "Thanks," I said. Neither was my mum. The bracelet finally broke. 2 years in, the leather cracked apart in the middle of a meeting. I held the pieces in my hand for a long time. After the meeting ended, I walked to a jeweler 3 blocks away, asked them to make a replica, same leather, same clasp, but with one addition: her initials stamped on the inside. They called 2 weeks later. I wore the new one home. Years passed. One day I got another envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo of a small house on a hill overlooking water. A simple note: "Built this myself. No tricks, just time. Hope you're well. L." I looked at the photo for a long time. Then I set it down, not out of bitterness, but because some letters don't need to be answered. I was invited back to the university the following spring. Keynote speaker. This time, not just on ethics, but on legacy. I stood in front of 300 students, all young, all trying to figure out how to shape their futures. I told them what I'd learned: that legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you protect along the way. That family can fail you, and you can still build something stronger. That revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about precision, about making sure the truth is documented, honored, and never buried again. I saw them listening, really listening, and for once I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Afterward, a professor approached me in the hall. She'd taught ethics for 20 years. "You spoke like someone who's been through something," she said. "I have, and you're still building, every day." She smiled. "Then I think you did it right." Later that night, I walked home past the city library. They had a display up: Women in Architecture. My mother's name was listed on one of the plaques. Below it, scholarship founder, visionary archivist, relentless believer in quiet legacy. I touched the glass and said, "I hope this is what you meant." A wind passed. Not cold, just present, just enough. The truth survived. So did I. And in the end, that was the most complete revenge of all: to outlast the lies, to build something clean, and to keep walking forward without ever looking back.